How's this? Doesn't look terrible. What's up, folks? Spiderfly back again on the World Wide Web. We made it. We made it through the last video. I fully sat down to re-record and started re-recording that last video. I was like, this is the worst. I can't use this. But then I did, because I'm lazy, and now you're stuck with it. That's just the quality you can expect here. But yeah, exciting new episode. We are into section 8, Ghost Punk. This is the magic chapter. A lot of people looking at Geto Ratz would probably think this book has a magic system. It absolutely does. I did not originally intend for there to be a magic system in this game. In fact, it wasn't added until really like maybe the last half year of development, something like that. It's had a lot more time since, but by the time I turned in my manuscript, it was still a relatively new mechanic, which is why it got fleshed out a lot more in the expansion, which I'm going to talk about later in the video and throughout the video. But yeah, the inclusion really completely changed the world and vibe of the game. I knew I wanted it to be like like low fantasy if I was going to do it. I wanted it to be a lot more focused on people and human stories, which is why there aren't like fantasy races and stuff like that like there are in Shadowrun or something like that. I'm not really a big like urban fantasy fan. I don't hate it or anything, but it wasn't really what was appealing to me. I was more kind of into like a cyberpunk body horror kind of vibe, more like Metro or like Fallout or something like that. But yeah, anyway, changed my mind. It was one of those things where I was like, I'm like refusing to put something cool in the game so I can keep it lame and horrible. And eventually I was like, I should just give my players something fun to do. So yeah, that's what this is. We're going to break down kind of all the details about it. I'm going to try to breathe through my nose this time. It's not going well. I'm already congested. But yeah, we're just gonna push through this one. This is gonna be a long one, by the way, so strap in. You'll already be able to see from the little bar at the bottom of the screen. At the start of every video, I'm like, I'm gonna try and get through this quickly, and then it always ends up being like an hour and a half after editing and stuff like this. So yeah, we're gonna get into it. We're gonna get our hands nice and dirty, and we're gonna sink our teeth into this radioactive wasteland. So let's get into it. So first things first, where do we start with the magic system? How does it work? How does it integrate into the world? This is a post-apocalyptic biopunk crime game thing about mega corporations and stuff. Where does magic factor in? So to start with understanding how this works in the Ghost Punk chapter, we got to start with the ghosts, or the ghost matrix. What is the ghost matrix? So the whole concept, right, we talk about at the beginning of the book, the kind of lore in Geto Ratz. It all starts with this thing called the 3 Days War, or the Ghost War. And it was sometime in roughly the 2040s. I will probably do some really, really big amendments to the dates and timelines in like a future edition, because I don't know how much I'm married to the exact dates. But yeah, roughly in the book it says in the 2040s, there was a very mysterious conflict called the 3 Days War afterwards. In the first day, essentially all the internet infrastructure was wiped out. All of our kind of technology that we relied on was rendered useless. Very much the rule of three. If you read the rule of three, you kind of get what that was like. Maybe not to that extreme, but like everyone was cut off. And at the time, everyone just thought it was a blackout. There would have been an attitude at the time where people were suspicious that a big conflict might be on the horizon. That's why so many people invested in like preservative technology, and why there's so many like stashes still of food you can eat from before the war in the Feedlands. But generally speaking, everyone thought, oh, a blackout, that's weird. Day 2, a bunch of man-made engineered pestilences and viruses and parasites and plants which could outcompete in any kind of ecosystem or environment. They're coming for me. Bunch of viruses, the bioplagues, as they've kind of become colloquially known. The body diseases. Yeah, that killed most of the people. But on the 3rd day, the ghost bombs fell, and the world as we know it has never been the same. So when the bombs fell, everyone kind of thought it was like basically nukes. There wasn't a whole lot of rhyme or reason as to where they were deployed or why, and it's still not understood who actually dropped them, if there was one country behind it, if there was a secretive organization, if every country had access to this arsenal. It wasn't really understood. And most likely the people that used them didn't understand the effects that they would have. The bombs, you know, as it says in the books, the bombs did more than kill the world, that killed death itself. So all of the ghosts, all of the spirits, we'll get to that in a second, of the people within the blast zones were kind of burned into the world. And now that's just kind of the effect dying has. So long story short, what the Ghost Matrix is this background network of radiation, right? That's just kind of what they call it to make it sound less insane than it is. Basically, whenever anything dies in the rotten world, it leaves a trace of itself behind as radiation. And most people just call them ghosts, because to the average person, that's exactly what it is. If you are going through a burned out old building and you look and see a person wearing clothes from 80 years ago that looks unnaturally clean and well kept, that keeps repeating the same 3 phrases over and over and doesn't know where they are, and then they vanish in a big shock of static electricity, and then your nose starts bleeding and you get tumors. Yeah, it's a radioactive ghost. That's basically what it is. And there's a lot of weird pseudoscience-y stuff of people trying to understand it or justify it or explain it, but no one really knows why it's happening or how it works. All we know is that it kind of sucks for all of us, because now that anytime anything that is living, plants, animals, people, die, they leave behind traces, or in some cases large concentrations of radiation. A forest fire is very radioactive. A slaughterhouse for animals, very radioactive. A mass grave, incredibly radioactive. And that radiation, which we'll get to kind of once we get to that section, is not good for you. Mentally or physically, it is really, really horrible to be subjected to it. But not only that, sometimes it claws back to life. Yeah, this is kind of where we get into like twisters. I'm gonna leave the twister stuff for probably the twister video, or like the monster video. But yes, sometimes the ghosts resuscitate and kind of John Carpenter's The Thing corpses back to life as one or possibly dozens of irradiated, confused, and angry ghosts resuscitate old bodies and bend them into horrible monstrosities to then hunt people and animals and anything that lives. So that's fun. But yeah, we said this was a magic system. So how does it work? The way, for the purposes of gameplay, what the Ghost Matrix is a mana pool. if you want to cast a spell, you are spending or burning ghosts to do it. You're essentially taking that radiation around you and channeling that through your body to create some kind of messed up nuclear reaction which will affect the world around you. You are channeling radiation through your body and then expelling kind of the result back out into the world. And what you're probably thinking is, wow, that can't be good for you. It really isn't. Wizards do not typically live long and fruitful lives. Wizards are kind of like the conspiracy theory homeless meth addicts of the rotten world, in a world full of them. People, you know, some of what they say is probably true, but people don't generally look at them as very trustworthy or credible. I met a lot of very, very kind homeless people that had some pretty wild theories about things. No shame to them, but that's definitely kind of the reputation a wizard would have in the world of Geto Ratz. They are not looked at with respect. They're not looked at as being like these all-powerful beings or individuals. Everyone kind of just hates them, like a lot, to the point that even using magic outside of like one or two very, very specific instances is highly illegal, and basically you're automatically a terrorist if you cast one spell and can go to prison for a long time. Possessing enchanted items, super illegal. Casting spells, super illegal. Synthesizing alchemical potions, super illegal. But yeah, you're using ghosts. You're using that radiation as energy to cast your spells. So in the spells and stuff like that, the Ghost Matrix is usually shortened to GMX. Ghost Matrix, GMX is the short form for it. And the number associated with it is then just an abstraction of how much radiation there is. So in the zone, you might roll a d6 every day to see how many ghosts are in the area. In the Feedlands, you might roll 2d6. In a Fallout zone, you might roll 3d6. Or in certain special areas and stuff like that. And every time you cast a spell, or in the game we call it burning a rite, you are subtracting from that pool. And anybody who is using rites, which are spells, is pulling from the same pool of radiation or of ghosts. And we'll get to why that's important later. I always say that and then I never get to what's important, but we're going to get to it. And editor me, now's the time to shame me if I forgot. So as far as the Ghost Matrix numbers, in the Mortally Coiled section, I knew this was going to happen. In the Mortally Coiled section of the chapter, it talks about what it looks like at different levels of radiation. And in the core book, it's purely just entirely cosmetic. 6 to 9, the world of the dead is bleeding and beginning to stain our senses of vibrant indigo. Cool. Doesn't really do anything mechanically. Sorry, cat troubles. Okay. So, yeah, in the expansion, there are actual effects to being dosed by irradiated spirits. The whole table for that is in that book. I think it adds a really, really interesting touch, and we'll get to that when we talk about like wizard combat and stuff like that. But long story short, at higher concentrations of radiation, you start to go insane and your body begins to decay, and you can eventually become possessed and demons can start to appear and stuff like that. Very Warhammer 40k, I guess. We'll kind of go into more detail later on that. But for the purposes of that, like, let's say, and usually I do it like, okay, it says in here, don't re-roll ghosts every time you go to another area. Treat it as like the amount of radioactive spirits that have attached themselves to your party. And then if they go to an area with higher radiation, just add more dice. So at the start of the day, they're in the zone. Okay, there are 4 ghosts around. That's a pretty low number generally. Then they go to outside the city into the outskirts, 3 more, so they're at 7. And then they decide to go into an old, labyrinth of dungeons beneath the earth, and there's 3 more, so now there are 10 ghosts, which is where you start to see problems. And that's kind of the idea, is you're just tracking that kind of pool of energy. And if you don't want to be subtracting as they leave, just think of it as the radiation has attached itself to your party for the rest of the day, and then it resets every day. Haunting. We call it haunting in the rules. Okay, yeah. So next up, it talks about the stars. What are the stars? The stars are these kind of occult figures. They're almost like wizard patron saints, kind of. They are wizards who have written these rites. They have essentially created spells. And creating spells is something that it takes like a lifetime of work to do, because we have no idea what we're doing, and it's just pure random back alley experimentation. To even figure out the spells we have now took a really long time. And the stars are basically just the different famous wizards who wrote a bunch of spells, amassed a cult following, and then eventually ascended by kind of becoming possessed by ghosts and like entering themselves into the ghost matrix somehow. So within the terms of the game, they're kind of like the pantheon of the ghost demon pantheon, kind of. Wizards will usually affiliate themselves with the teachings and rites of one particular star. Sometimes they'll do it with multiple. Different stars have different kind of cults and orders and secret societies associated with them. It was just meant to be cool. You don't have to read that much into it. If you want the cults of the stars to be a big part of your world and story, then you can really lean on them and having them be like a big force in society. In my games, I don't really use them that much. Every now and then you might find like a shrine or like a secret temple where there might be like a cult that's active. But I don't run cults that much. Really just because I don't find the need to. I find I have enough factions to balance in my games already that adding new cults is like almost more than I can, kind of chew off. But I'll use them sometimes. They can be fun. If you want your game to have more of them, feel free to go for it. But the stars are that pantheon. Feel free to add your own stars too. Each star gets a month, but that was just like a thing. There can be lesser stars. There can be major stars. Doesn't really matter. Okay, so now we get to rites. What are rites? Rites are spells. Cool. How do spells work? So rites so if the ghost matrix and radiation is like a resource, then rites are the formulas through which you channel them. A big inspiration, actually, for the magic system of this game, funny enough, is Tales of Vesperia. If anybody played Tales of Vesperia, which I'm pretty sure is a really obscure game, maybe I'm wrong. That little gem, you might not have heard of it, the most famous game of all time. Might not have heard of it, a little thing called Final Fantasy. But if you've played Tales of Vesperia, if anyone on Earth has played that game, that's almost exactly the magic system of this. You can look at it as magic, you can look at it as poorly understood science, which is my favorite trope and the reason I designed the magic system this way. But it's basically just coming up with weird formulas where you are using your body to channel radiation and then burn it. The radiation is dispersed after being introduced to your body and then turned into some kind of reaction. We don't really have the understanding of how or why it works. We just know that every now and again we do something and can produce a consistent result, and that becomes a rite or a spell or a formula or whatever you want to call it. In the book it says you are burning the ghosts of the damned like kerosene to power these occult spells. And that's basically what it is. It's pretty horrifying. Not good for you. Now, okay, notably, there are two ways to store spells or formulas. One is by enchanting an item. This is the most popular way. It could be like a ring or a medallion, or it could be inscribed into a weapon, or it could be a belt buckle, or it could be a music box. It does not matter. Could be a talisman, could be a doll, could be literally anything. But you kind of have an object which is itself highly radioactive, which has been inscribed with a rite or a spell, and you can now channel radiation through that object. It is considered to be the safer way to do it. It is the more sane and reasonable thing to do. And it's easier because, like, if, like we said before, magic is highly illegal. If a cop searches you, you can take the radioactive teddy bear and throw it out the car window as you're getting pulled over, right? And it's also considered, a lot of people don't want to store, it's like eating a nuclear fuel rod, you know what I mean? A lot of people don't want that. But the macros on uranium. Yeah, so like an exorcist, we'll get into the different types of spellcasters in this world in just a second. But yeah, basically, long story short, you can store it in an object outside of your body, makes it easier to transport, to trade, whatever. But when that object is destroyed, the spell is lost. And, people can steal your radioactive teddy bear. They can steal your nuclear wedding ring, right? So what the more fanatical exorcists will do is they will take... They'll make something which is called alchemical ink. In order to create these formulas, you usually need certain items. These are typically plants and radioactive objects found in like exclusion zones or in the feedlands, which are combined to make really complicated recipes and then are infused into objects, right? So the alternative to that is you can infuse it into ink and then tattoo it into your skin. And now instead of channeling the ghosts through an object, you are using your body as the conduit to cast these spells. It's not the safe way to do it. It's not the reasonable way to do it. But is it the awesome way to do it? Maybe, right? That's kind of what Gohawks are all about, is like, you just see some guy covered in crazy tattoos, and you're like, oh, I wonder what that guy can do, and then his arm turns into a snake and bites you in half, and you go, oh my god, that's why he had the snake tattoo. Crazy. Nova loves you. But yeah, those are the two ways to store these. Oh yeah, also, it says spells stored outside of your body have penalties to stability. We'll get to stability in a second. Okay, there are two kinds of spells in Geto Ratz. Two kinds of rites. There are blessings, which are good. You cast them, and then a good thing happens to the target of the spell. Could be on you, could be on a party member, could be on anybody, but the effect will be positive. The other one is a curse. Curses are negative. They do bad things to the target of the spell. So be careful. You can cast a spell on anybody. You can cast a boon or a blessing on your enemies. You can cast a curse on your friends. But yeah, be careful with them. It's the really straightforward. If it's good, it's a blessing. If it's bad, it's a curse. If it's in between, it'll lean whichever way. Okay. So we've gotten into it. The ghost matrix, werva or verva, or I don't know, I'm not Polish. Radiation, the more scientific term. Scientific. Whatever you want to call it. There are different types of people that cast spells. Magic in the Rotten world attracts all kinds of different people for all kinds of different reasons. Most of it is highly, highly illegal and super, super dangerous. But people are going to do it anyway, right? Because it's ridiculous amounts of power and being on the bleeding edge of not just technology, but like life as we know it is different. Things don't just die anymore, they come back. What does that mean for us? What does that mean for our planet? You know, what does that mean for philosophy? We know there is some sort of afterlife, whether we are consciously a part of it or whether the radiation is just an imitation of us. If it isn't actually us, we don't know. But you can literally talk to ghosts. Like, what's that about? People are going to be attracted to it. So in the book, it describes 5 different types of spellcasters, which we will get into right now. Yeah! Sorry, I had to hit you with a jump scare. Okay, so the 5 different forms of exorcist. Exorcist is just kind of like the catch-all term for anybody who casts spells. I use a lot of these terms interchangeably because it's all more or less the same thing. But technically, any kind of magic user is an exorcist, and then there are different types of exorcists within that. So the first one is the cultist. There's a lot of people with absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain in the rotten world. And these people are very susceptible to being attracted to kind of the powers of the ghost matrix, but also just to kind of the cults of personality of the different stars, right? The idea that there are these ascended alchemists who blessed the world with spells and then rejoined the billions of radioactive dead to look out over their followers and to give them new power. That's going to attract a lot of people that have absolutely nothing going for them. And so that's where you get a lot of the cults, the cultists. Not all of them are strictly bad. I mean, you can look at like the cult of Kroba, where they like to feed people. They like to make sure people have food to eat. You can look at, I think it was the Baruch cultists that have the Rot Hunters, like where they hunt monsters and stuff like that. The Ravos cultists, where they want to help the sick and things of that nature. Not all of them are like evil, like they're trying to just like do these awful things to humanity. A lot of them are trying to help in kind of their own like sort of sick, weird way. There's a lot of levels to it. All the cults are going to be different, but these are groups that cast spells to be closer to a sort of spirit or entity or organization, and they have their own kind of goals and objectives, but they're more of a collective. They're part of a group. There's the Drunes, or the Druidic Order. They are kind of a loosely affiliated quasi-religious organization that they don't worship the stars. They kind of worship the ghost matrix overall. They see it as an afterlife, and they see the ghosts as being like denizens of that afterlife, and so they kind of want to protect them. They don't really cast spells unless they have to. They constantly immerse themselves in radiation to be closer to the afterlife, and they believe that the ghosts are only so messed up and scared and confused because in their last moments they were suffering and they were afraid and they were alone. And so the Drunes believe in this idea of dying well, where they believe if you can find calm and peace in your last moments, then going into the ghost matrix, you will have calm and peace forever. But if you die in pain or in misery, then you will suffer in anguish forever. And so they like to comfort the dead and the dying. They like to commune with the ghosts. They try to accept that their death is inevitable, and when they die well, if they can die without fear, without jealousy, without longing, without attachment, that they can then kind of experience sort of like a nirvana kind of thing of just like feeling bliss forever. Which is an interesting take. I don't think it's the worst take that people have taken on like the death radiation plaguing the world. It's kind of a nice way to look at it. If you have to deal with death radiation every day. That's kind of a cool way to look at it. There's also kind of an association with them in nature. A lot of them choose to go into the feedlands and to be around more radiation and away from people and kind of from society. So you have like almost like, what would you call it, like conventional Droon, or druids, I guess they're sometimes called, where they'll like live in the cities and have friends and family, and they'll usually live in kind of like a temple, or like they'll kind of just like go around doing weird stuff, you know, spreading the good word, trying to help people. And then you kind of have a more like fundamentalist group where they will go alone into the wilderness and live only with the animals and with the spirits. And they kind of almost like regress away from humanity and try to be more like beasts than like men. It isn't in like a bad way to become like evil and hunt people. It's more to just kind of be like, attachment to human society and to humanity is going to prevent me from dying well, and so I'm just going to go immerse myself in the radiation, immerse myself in the wild, become a much more kind of simple being, and then I will be able to die well easier and kind of find my own enlightenment. Kind of like the church Droon versus like the monk Droon, kind of. So that's a thing. The next we've got kind of the coolest ones, the Gohawk or the Wiz. A Wiz, a Gohawk, a ghost punk. They see the Ghost Matrix, in the book it says, as a chance to make their mark on the world. They don't worship the stars, but they become drunk with the newfound power and are easily manipulated by larger forces. So what does that mean? A Gohawk or a Wiz or a ghost punk is a kid, usually, from the zone, usually from the slums, or maybe from one of the mega cities, right? Like in behind the walls, maybe. And they're almost like more of a youth subculture than they are a religion. It's just this idea of like, I have absolutely nothing, I'm in poverty, I could join a hula gang, I could become a gun for hire, I could go run cargo for a caravan, I could break my back for the syndicate, I could beg for a scab job, or I could cast spells and be a wizard. So a lot of young kids are like, screw all this stuff, I'm gonna go be a wizard. Sorry, mom and dad, I'm a wizard now. And so you see them, you know, hell metal is like the big music that's associated with the group. So you'll see like a kid in like ripped up clothes with radioactive enchanted medallions and rings and like a radioactive teddy bear backpack, listening to hell metal with like a bunch of pins in their coat and like band shirts and stuff like that. But instead of, you know, like going to parties and stuff, they're like lighting your nervous system on fire, and like turning you into a snake man and things like that. That's kind of what they do. They're really just in it for the thrills, and just because they got nothing better to do, and so they're just going to do all this stuff because it makes them feel powerful. It makes them feel like they matter, like they can actually leave a mark on the world. But like it says, right, when you're playing with forces like that, and you're that easily, you're young usually, right? It can end badly. I actually have one pulled up here. I made these character sheets for the launch party. This one here, you can download them now on the website, these character sheets, to print or to use digitally or whatever. This one here is Amelie Blackwater, aka Autumn Bomb. You can kind of see the art if you look really closely there. Yeah, Ghost Punks, cool. It's whatever, I cast spells. It's whatever, it's what I do. I go to parties and I cast spells. A lot of them kind of get involved in crime because they've been criminalized already just by engaging with the occult. They are already terrorists. Some of them have more revolutionary kind of ideals. Some of them eventually join cults. Most of them, though, don't last very long. Not a very long life on a wizard. Next up, we got liquidators. I kind of changed the rules on liquidators a bit. What a liquidator is they are okay, so as we've established, people in society hate spells. They hate wizards. They don't like it. The magic system in Geto Ratz is almost like everybody is a necromancer on some level. And a lot of people don't like that. It makes them uncomfortable and it's scary. And also they need radiation to be everywhere in order to even cast these spells, right? So people think that's creepy. There is one group that has been socially accepted and tasked. They're the only ones who can legally cast spells and the only people that people in society don't hate for casting spells. And those are usually the church. Occasionally there might be syndicate workers that do this as well, where that's their whole job. But 95% of the time it's going to be like a local religious group. And these people are called liquidators. They do not practice spellcasting to be powerful. They do not cast spellcasting, or they don't do any of that kind of stuff to actually cast spells. They will take the safest, most benign, most like kind of least harmful spell they can find, and they cast it just to dispel radiation. Because if nobody dispelled the radiation, it would become a big problem. Everybody would die of radiation sickness because everything dies and then releases more radiation. It immediately becomes like a death spiral. And so you have liquidators where they just go, usually, with like incense burners, praying, reading from some kind of religious book, maybe in a group, visiting places where people have died and cleansing the area to let their soul rest, right? And then also just going to places afflicted by radiation and just kind of dispersing it. They see the ghost matrix as pollution and nothing more. And so a liquidator just wants to get rid of that. Sometimes they're called chaplains. The army or, expedition, like parties going into the Feedlands will usually take a chaplain who's almost like a cleric, and they cast spells just so that everybody in that group doesn't die of radiation sickness. Or if that, army unit gets ambushed, they can have chaplains around that are keeping the radiation low as dozens of people are dying at a time, and then the whole unit, both sides fighting, are now dying of radiation sickness on top of the fighting that's going on. You have these liquidators that can clean it up. Very Death Stranding. The liquidators are very much like a Death Stranding kind of thing. Finally, you've got the alchemist. This is kind of the peak clean-cut wizard. They might be like dedicated to their craft and solo, but usually the alchemist is more of like a scientist than they are, a punk kid wanting to cast spells to rebel, or a liquidator trying to clear up pollution, or a droon who wants to go live in the wild, or a cultist who wants to worship a kind of pagan idol, right? The alchemist is sponsored, sometimes by a church, usually by a corporation. They are set up in a lab somewhere with all the money and resources they could ever need. They're protected by that sponsorship and financed to create new spells and to research what is going on. They think of the Ghost Matrix. A lot of people look at the Ghost Matrix with like a religious connotation or like a spiritual connotation or like it's magic or like it's something primordial. The alchemists just see it as some weird, confusing, they're like, yeah, there's radiation that causes us to hallucinate collectively, and we should look into what that is. That's kind of what the alchemists are all about. Notably, alchemy, like the alchemists are still usually committing crimes by doing this. It's just that, the government might cover it up to avoid an outcry, or the corporation might keep it a secret, like they might have a secret laboratory where they're doing these experiments. It is still 90% of the time very illegal, and 100% of the time would cause a huge public outcry if it became like common knowledge. But the corporations are gonna look into it. They're not just gonna, oh yeah, whatever, there's magic now. No, they're gonna try and find a way to profit, and so that's what they do. Okay, this is the part where we talk about using rights. So now we've talked about the lore, we've talked about what all this stuff is, what it means. Let's talk about actually from a gameplay perspective. How does it work? So first things first, if you are rolling to use a right, the first thing you do is what's called an anomaly check, or just a standard weird check, where you are going to take a d20. You are going to add however many points in weird you have. So let's say for this argument, I have 4 points of weird. Roll my d20, that's a 10. I've rolled a 14. That's a success. I have cast my spell on you. There are no accuracy modifiers to spells. Every spell is just a weird skill check to see if you can cast it. There are not spells that are like more difficult to cast in terms of penalties. Things like if you're playing with cover giving an accuracy penalty, or reflexes giving an accuracy or an evasion penalty, those do apply, and I'll get to why in a second. But you don't have to worry like, oh, this spell is a +4, this spell is a -4. You're just rolling a weird check every time. It could be a cool thing to add if you want to add some spells that are more or less difficult to use, or I might add in the future for another edition. But that isn't the important part. The important part is that they have a GMX, or a Ghost Matrix cost. So that is to cast the right, to burn the right, right? To burn the right, right? That is how many ghosts you need in order to do it. It is also how much drive it costs to cast the spell. So a spell with a GMX2, it uses up 2 ghosts when you cast it, and it costs 2 drive to attempt to cast it. GMX4, it uses up 4 ghosts, and it costs 4 drive. You can bankrupt drive to cast spells. You can't really bankrupt ghosts to cast spells. There is a system for that called Fallout. I'll get to that in a second. Spells never change. So yeah, pretty straightforward. It's a d20 skill check. The reason that accuracy penalties from like reflexes and stuff, and cover and environmental modifiers like smoke affect your spell casting is that you need a really, really high level of concentration to cast a spell or to use a right. If your concentration breaks even for a second or a half a second or a millisecond, right, the spell is failed and you have to try again. So it doesn't use up the ghost when you fail to cast a spell, but it does use up your drive. It is a lot of effort to channel this rate, because we don't even know how it works, right? We're just doing what we think works. You don't necessarily have to say words. Some people do, most people don't, because it's just a distraction. But it is also obvious when you are casting a spell, which is what takes us into the next one, alteration. Channeling all that radiation into your body, not good in the long run. It also changes you, even if it's temporary. So certain people will take on weird physical appearance changes as they are casting a spell, and then will return back to normal afterwards. This could literally look like anything. Get as creative as you want. People might look at you and be like, oh my gosh, that guy has blue eyes and antlers, and his hair is long and white and blowing in the wind, and all his tattoos are glowing. Generally, the more radiation, the crazier the hallucinations or the alterations are going to get. And they're going to return to normal shortly after doing it. But you can't, like, subtly cast a spell, really. There isn't really a way for you to channel all that radiation through your body, create a crazy reaction, and then not have people notice. So keep that in mind when you're playing the game. Like, this isn't going to be like, oh, can I cast this spell to give this guy a benefit as he's picking this lock? And it's like, okay, but you're in a crowded street and everybody's going to look and go, terrorist, it's a terrorist, get him. So you don't want to do that. The other thing it talks about is mutagens. So mutagens, if you remember, all the way back from the character creation video, or before that even, mutagens are the secondary skill under Weird. So you get a +1 to casting all spells for every point in Weird. For every 2 points, you get +1 mutation. A mutation is like, mutagens. Mutagens are like your spell slots, kind of, is the best way I can think about it, or describe it. It's essentially how many rights you can fit on your person or into your body at any given time without dying. It's kind of like your tolerance to radiation sickness. Different rights, based on how powerful they are, might have a higher or lower mutagen cost. So a weak one is going to be 1 mutagen. A more powerful one will be two mutagens. Some of them might even be 3 mutagens. And so you can only have so many spells on you at any given time. That's all that is. Oh, and if you exceed that maximum amount of mutagens, your physical appearance begins to change. So whatever you look like while you're casting spells becomes permanently how you look. And then you take a +1 trauma. Wow. +1 trauma for every point above your mutagen limit whenever using a right. So if you have a max mutagen limit of 3 and you've got 5 mutagens worth of spells on you and you cast a spell, you would take 2 trauma every time you cast a spell, and you would look mutated the entire time you were doing it. So it's really not a good idea to do it. If you do want to do that, it is almost always kind of like a kamikaze last stand kind of thing to do. You're almost certainly going to die from it. Yeah, and here it just says different stars are associated with different changes, but no 2 alchemists are the same, so feel free to get creative. Yeah, so like, you might want to choose your alteration to look different based on the star you choose, but it doesn't have to. It's kind of just, you look cool while you cast spells. That's kind of the idea. Stability is just the performance for spells. So if I roll a natural 1 while trying to, I didn't roll a nat 1, but if I did, if I rolled a nat 1 while trying to cast a spell, just like if I rolled to try and use a weapon, and that, I guess we'll get into that in the weapon chapter, you have to roll what is called stability. So you roll a d20 again. This is not modified by any stat. You'll just roll it again, and if it is a 10 or higher, the spell takes a -2 to its stability, but you still have it. If it is lower than a 10 in total, the spell breaks, essentially. And that's how this game handles durability for everything in the game. If you roll a nat 1 while using it, roll again, and if you fail that roll, then it's broken, and you have to actually go get it fixed. And if it doesn't break, then it becomes damaged and is more likely to break in the future. You can reattune your spells if you go to like a spell dealer. The price for that, it says, is half their current value. But remember, like, if you have the spell stored outside of your body, it's way more likely to break than if you tattoo it into your skin. If you have the spells of multiple different stars, they all become less stable, which is why a lot of cults only use 1 star's rights at any given time. There's so many buzzwords in this chapter that is the one thing with this chapter is, like, I'm going to say the same word over and over and over and over again. It gets very caught up in its own jargon. Spells, magic, whatever. Reading your rights, that's about it being illegal. Really the main thing to say about this thing is, like, so if you get caught, the police have like these wands they can do where they can wand objects in your body and be like, oh, that's radioactive, there's a spell in it. And if it's an item, they'll take it and either destroy it or dispose of it or use it as evidence against you, right? But if they find a tattoo, there are spells in your body. What they do is essentially take a gel and apply it to the tattoo, and then it will burn through your skin until it has gotten all of the ink, and then, you know, you'll just have a really horrific burn. So that's how you get rid of them. If you want to get rid of a spell, you can just gel it off of your body, but it destroys it in the process. So another reason why you might want to store it in an object as opposed to your body is like getting rid of them becomes a lot more difficult. For affinity, there's stuff like you have -2 to stability on all rights if you're mixing different stars' rights. You get a +1 to casting spells during the month of worship of that star, right? Things like that. Mortally coiled. Okay, this is where we get to the radiation poisoning stuff. Radiation poisoning. Yeah, in the expansion, we really flesh that out a lot more. Basically, at different levels of radiation within certain numbers, you will take condition loss, you will take stress, as you start to suffer different symptoms of, it's called ghost sickness, which is kind of death radiation poisoning. The other thing is eventually as it gets high enough, twisters can start to possess the bodies of people in the area. You can start to lose your mind. Party members and other NPCs can start to become possessed and do crazy things. So you want to keep that radiation low. And this is where you're probably looking at all this as like, wow, that's wild. That's weird lore, whatever. That's a lot of lore. Why is it like that? Well, think about it in terms of mechanics. You are in a combat, you are a wizard. There are, let's say there are 2 ghosts, and you want to cast a spell that costs 3, right? If you kill a person in combat, the number of ghosts goes up by 1, and now you can cast a spell. But the other wizard is casting from the same pool as you. And so every kill, everything that dies in combat makes the wizard more powerful, but also subjects everybody to the potential of radiation sickness. So when you're casting spells, you're making yourself less powerful, you're also making any enemy wizard less powerful, and you're keeping the radiation sickness at bay. But as you are killing more things, the wizards are becoming more powerful on both sides, and all of you are subject to radiation sickness. So it's this interesting kind of like tug of war where it rewards wizards for being very aggressive. It rewards their parties being very aggressive, and it allows them to really balance off each other a lot. Like having a gunslinger who's just one-tapping enemies, dual-wielding pistols, fatal striking all the time, and then having a wizard that is capitalizing on that while still keeping it in check. Because if you're a super powerful murderer and that's your character, and you murder a bunch of NPCs, that's great until their wizard shows up, and now in being good at combat, you have made their wizard super powerful. And so it kind of becomes this interesting thing of like, you have wizard duels, it really affects kind of party composition and stuff like that. Maybe it's worth you taking radiation sickness so they can cast a bunch of crazy spells. Maybe it's not. That's kind of the fun balance of actually playing it. The last thing that I didn't see, let me try and find where it is Fallout, which is an important part of this. I don't even know if it's in here. Okay, so there's 2 ways of running this at your table. If your wizard does not have enough ghosts to cast the right they want to cast, there's 2 things you can do. You can say they can't cast it, which really reins in on some of this stuff. And I kind of prefer it personally because it means that you actually, like, ghosts are an important resource that as you use them, it's a big deal. You can't just spend them if they're not there. The other thing you can do is there's a system called Fallout somewhere. I can't find it right now for some reason. I swear I wrote it down. But in Fallout, I think you take like, you lose one condition and you take one stress for every ghost you didn't have that you're using by casting the spell or something like that. It's essentially you're giving yourself ghost sickness in order to push yourself through to casting the spell. You can run it however you want. I kind of prefer it when wizards can't cast spells if there are no ghosts. It makes ghosts really important. It forces people to kind of coordinate and stuff like that. But I've had some people be annoyed where they have a spell that costs a lot of ghosts and they're like, I can never use this because there's never any ghosts around. I just can't use my spell. I'm a wizard and I just can't cast spells. Awesome. There's a lot of perks that let you do this already where you can use stress or condition to cast spells with. But yeah, Fallout is like an optional rule if you want to kind of give wizards a bit more leeway, but if you don't worry about it too much. The last one is concentration here. Oh yeah, it costs 1 drive to resist a spell. So if someone casts a spell on you, there's a defensive action in combat where you can resist it. You can essentially be like, I'm not going to lose my mind and allow this hallucination to become real, or maybe you're trying to break their concentration or something. All that it is you're rolling grit or weird to have their spell not work. You can do that, I think, at any time. Like, I think you can resist a right on somebody else's behalf. No, you can't. Never mind. I don't think you can do that. This is the other thing. You don't have to distinguish features about somebody you're casting a spell on. So it doesn't matter if they're in a disguise. It doesn't matter if you don't recognize them. It's just being able to fully focus on the exact target, because even a momentary lapse of concentration could cause it to misfire. So if you're looking at a guy and you're like, I'm going to set you on fire with radioactive ghost flames, and you're really concentrating on them, and somebody knocks on the door and opens up, hey, what are you doing in there? And you turn, you could light that person on fire, right? So concentration, very important. Maybe you look down at your hand, you're like, oh, weird, I didn't know that. I've set myself on fire, right? Concentration is very important. So things like cover, things like people moving around a lot, their evasion, anything that can break your concentration is super dangerous. And so a lot of wizards are like, if your concentration is weak for even a second, just stop, take a breath, try again. Like, don't push yourself through it. But the one thing that's worth noting, rights always ignore armor. If somebody has armor, your right is 99%, like unless otherwise stated, it goes through the armor, because you are attacking them fundamentally, like functionally, with radiation. And so armor doesn't matter. If you bite them with a radioactive snake head, that's going to ignore their armor. You don't have to worry about the armor with that. If you're going to light them on fire, you are lighting them on fire, right? So armor is kind of ignored by that. This can be very, very powerful if you're taking on like a guy in a mech suit or something, and you can just light him on fire inside the mech suit. Makes spells really, really good for getting around enemies with like high defenses. And they're also, generally speaking, really accurate because they don't really have accuracy penalties. And it can be really hard to resist them if you are not also a wizard. But there is no way to cast a spell outside of your line of sight, which is kind of the trade-off. Like, you have to have a clear line of sight of the person you want to cast a spell on to use it. 90%. There might be like ridiculously powerful wizards that don't need to do that, but for the purposes of the gameplay, yeah. Okay, so now we get into the different spells. I'm just gonna like read a couple of them so you can just get the idea. They use the same kind of system for tracking what they do as weapons and stuff like that. There's a description, and then there's just whatever. They also use the quality system. I'll talk on quality a bit more in the video where we talk about like weapons and stuff like that. So each spirit gets their own little write-up. So I'll read one of those write-ups now. Let's see. Oh, my favorite's Novu. So we'll talk about Novu. Where's Novu at? April. That's my month. Novu came to me in a dream, actually. It was a really horrific, awful dream. And that's how they made their way into the game. There we go. Novu. Here we go. Few have felt the love of the world eater Novu. Their steel scales creak on rusted hinges as their body coils endlessly around the sky. Their followers, the fangs of Novu, are often associated with cannibal rituals, making them hated by many. They claim, however, that Novu's love is endless and all-consuming. Novu's month of worship is April. Each of these come with 4 spells. Add your own spells if you want. I added like 2 in the expansion or something like that, or like 4, because I have a hard time coming up with spells. But add as many as you like. There isn't like a rule to them being limited to a certain amount. I just wanted it to be consistent. So then an example of a Novu spell. So the lowest level spell he has is called Ouroboros. It is a blessing. It is a quality 2 blessing. The description is, the body twists and writhes. You shed your skin. It looks more scaly than you remembered last. So you shed your skin. You look all scaly and slimy. And what it does, in the brackets, it says, take +1 trauma, recover 4d6 blood. It's GMX2, so it costs 2 drive to do it, and it uses up 2 ghosts. And it's 1 mutagen, so it takes up 1 of your mutagens when you carry this spell. You could cast it on yourself, or you could cast it on anybody else. But whoever, you're spending 2 drive, you're using up 2 ghosts, you're storing it with the mutagens, but whoever you cast it on takes 1 trauma and recovers 4d6 blood. So you injure yourself, but you get a bunch of hit points back. It could be okay in combat. It's not great. But like in an emergency situation, it could be okay. Let's do another one. Another one that I like is Alimak, Star of the Carnal and the rogue 4th face of Moleo. Alimak is often depicted as an intoxicated monkey, some ancient predecessor of humanity. Their followers, the missing link, are most often associated with orgies, rampant partying, and random acts of violence. Alimak's month of worship is October. So Alimak is the monkey party god, and so one of their spells, one of the best spells in the game, low-key, is Party Animal. It is a Q3 or a quality 3 blessing. The description is, your body craves life with a feverish intensity. All carnal pleasures are heightened. As you enter the room, all eyes fall on you, an elegant hunter, savage beast of the dance floor. The effect is target gains +1 zeal and loses double stress for the rest of the day. It is GMX3, so it costs 3 drive and 3 ghosts to use, and it takes up 1 mutagen. You party super, super hard. Can be really useful, actually. Surprisingly, it can be crazy useful, because what most people in my party will do is they will say, hey, I have a psych scar. I'm at 14 out of 12 stress. I need to lose stress now. Can you cast Party Animal on me? And then the wizard will say, sure. You're filled with a love of life. What are you going to do with it? And then they immediately start smoking fentanyl to get their stress down. And that is just how the systems in this game interconnect. The last one I'm going to talk about is Moleo. There's 13 of these entities or stars. Each of them has 4 spells associated with them. I'm just going through a few random ones so you can kind of get the idea. So Moleo, Star of the Body. Moleo's 3 faces twist and snap back and forth as their head spins and turns forever. Moleo is often associated with lust. However, their true domain is the power of the human form itself. Their followers, the flesh folk, seek to achieve physical perfection. However, their carnal cravings can overwhelm their senses. Moleo's month of worship is July. So it kind of implies there that Moleo may have been 4 alchemists. 3 of them fused together to become one entity, and then maybe Alimak, the rogue 4th face, had kind of a different idea and broke away and did their own thing. And then, which one do I want to do? I'll do Bounty of the Flesh. So Moleo is very powerful. Bounty of the Flesh is a Q5 blessing. Description: you can feel your calories catching fire, your organs working in double, triple time. You begin to shake with a sudden burst of energy. Your limbs stretch, your tendons pop, your stomach growls. Your sweat smells appalling as it rolls down your face. Target gains +1 drive for every 2 condition they have. GMX2, 2 mutagens. So if you have a party member who has 8 out of 10 of their condition, you could cast Bounty of the Flesh on them, and they would gain 4 drive off the bat, which is super, super crazy. That's why it's a Q5 blessing. And I'm realizing now that I have not said a single curse, so I'm going to do one more just so you can get an idea of what a curse is. Here's one, Kroba. I like Kroba a lot. The Star of Restoration. Kroba is depicted as a large frog blanketed in a thick coat of mucus. Calming smoke billows from their nostrils. They can provide sustenance temporarily, but their hunger is relentless and seems only to grow. Their month of worship is May, and their followers, the children of Kroba, can be seen routinely handing out food to any who will take it. Just try to ignore these slimy textures. So endlessly hungry frog guy. That's kind of cool. So their most powerful spell is Satiation. It is a Q5 curse. The description is: the worst part isn't when it leaks out of your nose or your eyes, or when your body gets so heavy you can no longer lift your arms or legs. The worst is when you gasp for air and the ooze floods your mouth, crushing your teeth as it bubbles up your throat from deep within your stomach. Target takes a 2d6 stun, GMX3, 1 mutagen. So you essentially stun lock somebody by having them expel an infinite amount of satiating slime out of everywhere in their body. Pretty messed up. Kroba, I thought you were chill. That was very chill of you. So yeah, there's a bunch of these guys. Check them out in the book. Okay, which takes us into the last section. I always get nervous that I'll run out of space and then, it'll get rid of all my progress. So I'm like 40 minutes into recording. So, yeah, okay. So lastly, I'll get into the kind of side rules in a second, but first I want to talk about summoning. So this is not a mechanic in the core rulebook at all. It is only in the expansion back alleys and black markets. It was a bid to capitalize on Shadowrun. I stand by. Geto Ratz is a great system if you like Shadowrun but don't want to play the mechanics of Shadowrun. You have people be like, play Anarchy. You have people be like, oh, play it in Cyberpunk Red. You have people that, come up with all these elaborate ways to play Shadowrun, right? Because they love the world and they don't really like the mechanics and stuff like that. So the summoning system was to add summoning to Geto Ratz. What is it? So like a spell, each of the 13 base stars has their own physical embodiment. So if you have a nearby corpse of any kind, you can cast this spell and have what is called a demon inhabit their body temporarily, and then you can then command it to do various things. They're super basic. They're pretty much only good in combat. Some of them can be done for like reconnaissance. They couldn't really do reconnaissance well. You'd have them like cause a distraction or cause chaos, but usually they just go on a big killing spree. You can accidentally summon them and then have them turn against you. But usually, you bring them in, they cause a bit of chaos, and then they die after a couple rounds of combat. They don't last very long. I won't get too into it because it's not in the main book, but if you think the idea of being able to do summoning on top of all the spell casting sounds cool, it adds like some cool end game stuff because the summoning starts at like Q4 and then goes up to Q7. So you have to have a lot of money to do it. It takes up a lot of your mutagens, but it's really fun. It's just fun to play with. So if you're into that, do that. Up next, we've got alchemical goods. These are just different magic-inspired items that you can use. So they're talismans. While wearing a talisman, you have +1 to the rights of that star, and all the other rights that aren't from that star is a -6 stability. So if you're like dedicated to one of the stars, you can wear a talisman of that star and be better at casting their spells. You have charms, which you can, they're essentially any item that is just infused with some radiation. You can destroy it to release more ghosts into the area. So if you're going into a fight and there aren't many ghosts around, you can be like, I'm gonna destroy my charm. There's now 2 more ghosts in the area, right? Can be good for that. There are haunted items. Oh, wait. Oh, no, sorry. Haunted items are the one that does what I just described. What charms do is when you destroy them, you can re-roll a spell. So let's say I went to cast that satiation spell. I just rolled a 17 if we're still counting my +4 to weird. But had I failed, I could say, I'm going to destroy my charm and roll that again and whatever. Then there's a couple mushrooms you can eat. This was kind of just like to play into the idea of like, there are these strange items in the wasteland that you use to create spells, and they do different stuff. Don't play with these if you don't want to play with these. I just thought it would be cool to like imply an alchemy system. I'll do an alchemy system probably eventually because it just feels like a system I will do at some point. But this was kind of to inspire that. So if you want to play with them, you can. If you don't want to play with them, you don't have to, because some of them are actually really powerful, almost overpowered for the prices they're listed at. So just take them as like inspiration. Don't think of them as like optional. Okay, next up we've got familiars. Familiars are when you can infuse rights into animals. So rights can be infused into living creatures restored from the brink of death. This generally only works with animals, as human ghosts tend to be too volatile. Familiars can carry the mutagen cost of a right so that you don't have to, getting +1 mutagen for every 2 points in their mutation stat. Familiars adopt the personalities of whichever ghost is infused into their body and can communicate telepathically with their owner if the GMX is 1 or higher. So let's say you want to have a spell, but you're out of mutagen slots. You can get a familiar. It doesn't really explain how you get a familiar. I would say make them spend money on it, or maybe if there's like a cool roleplay moment, if there's like a dying animal and you save it, maybe it can become a familiar. It doesn't really matter that much. If for whatever reason you have a pet, you can put spells in them, so they will carry the mutagen cost, but you can still cast those spells as long as they're around you. And then, yeah, they take on the personality of whatever ghost is nearby. So we have one in our party named Rodoldo, and he is a trash fox, which is a half fox, half raccoon, that one of the party members had a pair of enchanted goggles that allowed him to talk to animals, and now that raccoon is wearing those goggles, he can now talk to people. So they have a talking half fox, half raccoon, which has the personality and voice of a 90-year-old merchant who died and is now inhabiting the body of this raccoon. Or is the raccoon, or the raccoon's using that guy's voice to speak to people? Who knows, right? We're not philosophers. We don't know how it works. But they have a talking raccoon with an old guy voice. Stuff like that. It's just for fun. If people are abusing it, don't let them. But I just thought it would be a fun rule if your wizard could have like one or multiple pets that they were using to hold their illegal radioactive spells for them. Whatever. There's enchantments, another optional rule where you can buy enchantments for your weapons. So just as an example, if you go to like a wizard and you take like maybe a sword, maybe you have like a rusty old machete, and and you say, please enchant my machete. So what it does is an enchanted weapon takes up 1 mutagen, and it uses up 1 ghost anytime you use that ability while making an attack. But you make an attack with the weapon, and then you can choose to burn a ghost to make it do its effect. So some examples: Reaper's Call. This weapon deals +2 damage equal to the GMX on this attack. So every time you use the enchanted ability, it uses up a ghost, but then you do an additional 2 damage for every ghost left in the area. Can be good. Starving Strike. This attack deals 1 condition loss equal to trauma on this attack. So if you do an attack and do 2 trauma, you can burn a ghost and then also do 2 con damage. Screaming Blow. This weapon does, or Funeral Pyre. This weapon deals half damage on this attack and applies burn to the target. So you can light someone on fire with an enchanted machete. Whatever, it doesn't matter that much. You can do it to guns if you want. But again, if the weapon breaks, the enchantment's lost, right? So take good care of your enchanted weapons. It's expensive to enchant weapons. It still takes up a mutagen, so if you're a wizard, you might be better off just having more spells as opposed to an enchanted weapon. But remember, everybody starts with a mutagen of 1, so even if you're not a wizard, you can still wield an enchanted revolver. But, you know, if it puts you over your mutagen cap, whatever, you're going to start taking trauma, right, as if you're casting spells. It's effectively spell casting, but just with a weapon instead of a designated spell. The last rule in here is the Bleak Communion. Another optional rule. I'm just going to read this because trying to explain it without reading it would be way worse. The streets of the zone are haunted, but just because they're dead, that doesn't mean they're totally useless. Ghosts can occasionally be communicated with, albeit in a limited fashion. They are confused, just a scattered fragment of a person that has been eroded away. You can make a weird check to communicate with a ghost if there is one nearby. You can speak to them and ask them any questions you wish. They may not always know exact answers, but they can at least point you in the right direction. This consumes 1 ghost in the area, and the spirit is burned away, banished from the limbo that is their existence. So if you're going around in the street, and this is something I always do if there is a wizard in the party, they will see the world differently. Think about Ice King from Adventure Time, right? You will have all these people that are going around the zone minding their business, and your wizard is going to be looking around, and they can, I like to say that if there's enough ghosts, they can see ghosts around, like Paranorman. You guys are like going through a side street, and you're in a crowd of people, and your wizard might not always know the difference between like what's a living person and what's a ghost. But yeah, you can roll to cast a spell to see, oh, is there a ghost nearby? Can I talk to the ghost? Ghosts, since they are only a radioactive fragment of a person's consciousness, which has kind of been imprinted or burned into the world as like they're more of a shadow of a person than a real person that's like fully conscious. It's debatable if they even have consciousness or if they're just, again, just like a part of a person that got almost like copy pasted into the environment. But yeah, you can talk to them. They usually will only have a couple phrases they can say. They usually are confused or scared or don't know what's going on, and so it can be really hard to get information out of them. But you know, you can try. You can always try. Maybe they have something useful they can tell you, maybe not. It's kind of up to the zone master how they want to run it. Like, it wouldn't be like, it's not like an abusable thing of like, there's a mysterious stranger in our midst, and one guy goes, I'm going to ask the ghost, hey ghost, was this the guy who did it? Was that the guy who did it? Okay, that was the guy. We solved the mystery. I talked to the ghost. They're not CCTV. You know what I mean? They're not like a camera that perfectly captured everything. But they can give you hints. They're useful for giving hints. Or you can also, if you feel bad for the ghosts, you can just talk to them, have a conversation, and then quietly burn away their memory. Or at least that fragment of them. And it's also just fun when you're exploring the environment and you can describe, like, you guys are all doing this, but you see, like, there is a woman soaking wet walking through the streets, incredibly pale. She is a bit bloated from the water. Her veins are blue, and she smiles and waves at you, and water pours out of her mouth. I also usually run ghosts as like silent 90% of the time, so you can just see them doing things, but you can't actually hear them unless you're like actually using up ghosts to talk to them. But it's up to you. You can run it however you want. Doesn't really matter. But that is the magic chapter. And the next chapter is probably going to be even longer, so that's great. But yeah, that's Ghost Punk. That's the way ghosts work in Geto Ratz. It is a kind of weird, mysterious system where a lot of the rules are kind of, you can kind of bend them how you want, come up with your own spells, come up with your own systems, your own way things work. Do ghosts always look like people? Do they look like animals sometimes? Do they look like abstract beings? I kind of like to say that it depends on the person, right? Different people that associate more with animals than humanity might become animals when they're in ghost form. They might become monstrous. They might be angry. They might be vengeful. When we talk about more of the monsters, we're going to see more kind of the dark side of the spirit world, or the ghosts, or the radiation, or however you define it, right? Is it real? Is it magic? Is it science? Is it in between? Who knows? But it's out there, and now we got to deal with it. Yeah, running wizards is fun. I have certain players where it's like that's all they want to do is play a wizard. Wizards are cool. Wizards are cool. I don't know what else I got to say about it. Thanks for watching the video. Hope this made sense. Let me know in the comments you got any questions. And if you don't like me, leave a dislike, because I'm just trying to get that engagement, baby. That's what it's all about. Take care. Have a good one. See you in the next video. Later.